It's my top value plays and GPP stacks for week 8, and we're starting right now. What's up, guys? Welcome to another daily fantasy sports video. If this is your first time here and you want to be a profitable DraftKings player and get better at betting, start now by subscribing to the channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss anything along the way. And if you're already a Holkamaniac, you know exactly what time it is. Smash that like button and we will get started. Let's start with value in this Houston Texans and Oakland Raiders game. Kenny Stills, 4,700 on DraftKings, 5,700 on FanDuel. Now that we know that Will Fuller will be missing this game with that hamstring injury, Stills is going to be the guy that's going to serve as that kind of field stretcher in this Texans offense. So I definitely think that even after last week, we can kind of circle back and see what his role was like with Fuller since he did exit that game. Stills played 94% of the snaps last week, did have that first 100-yard game of the season as well. It's an awesome matchup even from a cornerback perspective. He's going to get Trayvon Mullen, who I do think can be beat for sure. Oakland just traded away their starting cornerback Garen Conley as well. So I definitely think that a team, Oakland 30th in DVOA against the pass, 11th against the run, they're definitely going to funnel towards the passing game. So it's an amazing spot for this Houston passing game in general, but in particular, someone like Kenny Stills, who, like I said, does stretch the field. This team's 31st at defending deep passes of 15 yards or more. So I definitely think Stills at 4,700 is a fantastic value. I think you can build around him in both cash games and GPPs. You don't necessarily have to have Watson, but as we'll get into in the stacks, almost had those guys as my top stack, but maybe we'll just keep Stills as a value play for now. It might be popular this week if you're attacking the Tennessee Titans offense to actually pay all the way down at tight end for someone like Jonnu Smith now that Delaney Walker is out with that ankle injury. But from a stack perspective and GPPs, a lot of times I'm trying to fade one of the popular options in a stack. So I'm actually going to go with Ryan Tannehill and both of his pass catchers, Corey Davis and A.J. Brown, fading Jonnu Smith. He's a guy that is very talented. We have seen him block a decent amount in the past. So if it ends up being Davis and A.J. Brown that kind of benefit from this matchup, I definitely think that that could be a great way to go in tournaments. Corey Davis in particular, he leads all Titans receivers with 221 routes this year, but 352 air yards. And if we're talking about his first game last week with Ryan Tannehill, he hit season high marks in both receptions and targets, 6 and 7 there respectively. And this Buccaneers team, they've allowed the second most DraftKings points to opposing wide receivers, nearly 50 points per game, which is just crazy. A.J. Brown on the other side of this stack, definitely think that he's just a kind of a promising rookie at this point. He played at least 50% of the snaps in each of the last 3 games. But I do think that last week it is a nice kind of data point that 6 receptions, 8 targets from Ryan Tannehill. I think this Buccaneers team is one that we're definitely going to be targeting as kind of a funnel defense as well. They're number 1 against the run, number 25 against the pass per DVOA. So I think that both of these pass catchers squarely in play. 4,100 for Brown, 4,400 for Corey Davis on DraftKings. It's a cheaper stack. You don't kind of get the access to someone like Jonnu Smith, who might be a little bit chalky if people, like I said, are going to go the cheap tight end route this week. So I love the idea of pairing up both these other pass catchers with Tannehill. If you wanted to run that stack back with anyone on Tampa Bay, of course, guys like Chris Godwin, Mike Evans are squarely in play, but I actually like the idea of going to Cameron Brate, saving a little bit. I mentioned that if you're not going to go the Jonnu Smith route at tight end, Brate's a pretty similar play this week. O.J. Howard has already been ruled out as well. So I think that Brate's an interesting one. He hasn't played over 43% of the snaps once this entire season, but he's someone that has been kind of a touchdown guy for us in the past, and definitely think that Jameis could still go back to that well this week. He hasn't had 50 receiving yards in any game this season, but he has found the end zone twice. So I think there's some upside here if you wanted to roll it back and save a little bit at the same time. Cameron Brate could make some sense. Let's talk about the wide receiver position and a little bit of value now. I'm starting with Mike Williams, 4K on DraftKings against the Chicago Bears. And the thing with the Chargers this week is that Keenan Allen is questionable. He has a hamstring injury that has been battling through, didn't practice on Thursday or Friday, and it does look like he's truly questionable. So Mike Williams should be the one that kind of could see some increase in production. He hasn't topped 75 yards all year, and he hasn't scored a touchdown in his past 4 games, but I do think that the usage has been there for Mike Williams. He's averaging almost 9 targets per game. He's 8th in the entire league in air yards as well. So I think that even just since he dropped that pass in the end zone last week, people might not go back to him. And I think that that would be a mistake given his price. And I think, again, with the injury, it'd be nice to see kind of Williams have a breakout performance here. I do think that it's not a great matchup by any means. The Bears are actually number 8 in the entire league as far as their coverage grade. But but they have had some struggles this year against kind of these bigger kind of contested catch receivers. So Michael Thomas, Terry McLaurin, both had pretty good games against the Bears. And I do think that Williams is going to see an increase in those opportunities, like I said, if we do get either no Keenan Allen or limited Keenan Allen. So I think that going back to Mike Williams at 4K, I think he's right there with Kenny Stills, one of those guys that we could get a little bit of savings and still have a lot of upside in tournaments. So what I like to do with stacks a lot of times is try and identify what maybe one of the best stacks are, and then what would be like a kind of initial pivot off of them that is a similar price point. So at the quarterback position, I mentioned how Houston could be really popular this week, Deshaun Watson, but what about paying down 100 for Russell Wilson? And I do think there's almost always a little bit of risk here, but one of the main things that I love about this stack is it does look like Matt Ryan is going to play on the other side of this game. So we want to be targeting Russell Wilson in these games that we don't necessarily think are going to get out of hand, and if it's truly going to shoot out, Matt Ryan could be a big part of it on the other side. So I'm going to pair him with DK Metcalf. So I think that Metcalf is one of those guys that could pop off here. He's someone that's done reasonably well since Disley has been out. He's seen an increase in targets. So weeks 1 through 5, he averaged only about 5 targets per game. The last 2 weeks, he's averaging about 7 targets per game. So I do think that Metcalf is one of those guys that could pop off in this spot. He already leads the league with 9 end zone targets as well. And that's never a fluke. Russell Wilson's someone that definitely likes to make his attempts count. He's extremely efficient. So I think that that's probably by design. And at some point, Metcalf is going to be one of those guys that does get in the end zone a couple times and pop off a couple deeper plays as well. We know Atlanta can be beat deep. They can be beat short. They're one of those teams that we're definitely targeting from an offensive perspective on the other side. So I think Metcalf is interesting. I love Russ in particular just because the efficiency that I mentioned. He is one of those guys that is leading the entire slate in yards per attempt, 8.5 yards per attempt to be exact. So love the matchup. I know that they're not at home, but against Atlanta, I think that that team total is really appealing for Seattle. On the other side of this game, I like the idea of running this stack back with Calvin Ridley. I mentioned that Matt Ryan does look like he will be playing in this game, and the trade of Mohamed Sanu, I think, is something people probably still aren't talking enough about. Sanu had a 14% target share in this offense, and I do think there's going to be a lot more offensive formations that Calvin Ridley is just going to be an absolute staple of now. With kind of the upside that Matt Ryan has shown this year, it's important to realize that even though a lot of people kind of got burned by Ridley last week, there's still a ton of scores to go around in this offense, even if you consider Ridley someone that's going to be playing behind Julio, behind Austin Hooper. I think that this is an offense that they're just producing so many touchdowns that Ridley could be in for a big kind of boom or bust type play weekly. But if you do catch one of those boom weeks, especially at a little bit lower ownership, I think that that's one of the things that we should be looking for in tournaments. So I'm running these stacks back with Ridley. So Russ to Metcalf to Ridley still is going to give you a lot of flexibility to get up some of the best running back plays this week, and that's almost always my main priority. If you want to learn more about how to become a profitable daily fantasy sports player and better, start now by hitting the subscribe icon in the bottom right hand corner so you don't miss anything. Be on the lookout for all of my DFS content, but in particular, I go live each and every Sunday morning at 11:30 Eastern Time. Twitch.tv/Joe Holka. We'll see you tomorrow morning.